Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Trans Stupid, where I take a look at the wonderful world of LGBTQIA+ news because, well, stupidity is intersectional. So there's a couple of changes, as you might have seen. First of all, different background. Well, this is because I've moved flat, and this is the reason why there wasn't a video last week, so I do apologise to the people looking forward to that, but I'm back on camera because I've finally upgraded and got myself a new machine.
That is a new machine!
Yeah, not many of you are going to get that reference, I'm afraid. So this week there's two specific stories that I really want to talk about. In fact, these were ones I'm going to do individual videos on, but because of sorting out computer and moving, I'm going to nail them both in this video. But before I do that, there is a breaking story which I need to comment on, or at least it's breaking at the time of recording. So my regular viewers are no doubt aware of the situation involving NUS trans officer Jess Bradley, who was suspended at the end of July last year amidst serious allegations of sexual misconduct at work. The NUS went quiet, as was probably a little bit predictable, and so 11 months later, nothing really has happened with Bradley. Now, at the end of May, there was an election for Bradley's replacement, a new trans officer, and one person ran for it, which was Eden Ladley. 6 weeks after that election closed, it took them that long to add up the votes for one person. Really got to think about whether it's a good value for money for these people going to university, but Eden Ladley is now going to be Jess Bradley's replacement. So what has happened to Bradders? Well, you'd be interested to know that the NUS investigation into Jess Bradley hasn't finished. I called them about this to try and find out a little bit more information. And the NUS said to me that they couldn't comment on a criminal investigation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So I was right when I said that there was more going on here, and I was right when I said that there is something very serious and very wrong at the heart of this. It gives a bit of an explanation as to why it's taken the NUS so long, but it doesn't let anybody else off the hook. The entirety of the NUS liberation campaigns have stayed entirely silent on this, not making their members aware, not saying anything about the situation to anyone, and keeping it purposely quiet. And yet these are people who are meant to be there to protect people within the LGBT communities in these universities. I am not sure exactly what Bradley has indeed been accused of by the legal system. It's probably connected to what we know about with the NUS. There could be more to it. There were some very serious allegations that came out about Bradley after all. So it's probably going to take a while before we end up hearing more. But I was right when I said there was more to this. And I believe that I am right by holding these people to account. More students should be doing this. It shouldn't be my job to do so. Quite frankly, this makes the NUS look atrocious. And if students actually cared about who it was who was representing them, Eden Ladley will be walking into a new role with quite serious questions hanging over her head. But of course they're going to give her an easy time because she holds the same mandate that Bradders did. So this is going to go ignored as well. But also remember that the people who did know about Bradley and did speak out against it, almost all of them universally said they were not going to go to the police. They didn't want to get the law involved. And these are the same people who advocate for prison abolition. They couldn't control it. They couldn't resolve it in their own little communities. And once again, it is up to the law to solve the problem. These people have a very dangerous agenda. This is why it needs to be questioned, because this does put people at risk, regardless of whether Jess Bradley is innocent or guilty of what they've been accused of, that the attitudes of these people could really put someone at risk. But with that out of the way, the first story that I want to talk about at this point is probably more than a week old, and you're probably going to be quite well aware of exactly what it is, as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling came out as a TERF, apparently. Yes, so J.K. Rowling was found to be following a couple of gender-critical accounts, which includes Magdalene Burns, who Gay Star News has highlighted a particular tweet saying, "You are effing blackface actors, you aren't women, you're men who get sexual kicks from being treated like women. Fuck you and your dirty fucking perversions. Our oppression isn't a fetish, you pathetic sick fuck." Wonderful words, aren't they? But J.K. Rowling is free to follow whoever she likes, and if she does agree with some of the things that Magdalene says, that is entirely her choice. And the queer world took it as well as you might think. So some of the wonderful tweets sent out about J.K. Rowling include, "I love J.K. Rowling for creating Harry Potter. I hate her for basically everything else. J.K. Rowling ruined Harry Potter. TERF cunt." So J.K. Rowling, or whatever her stupid ass name is a TERF? Lol. I really always thought she's an overpaid and opportunistic stupid ass author anyway, and I think I still own one HP book somewhere and that will go in the bin tomorrow. Yep. Hashtag fuck TERFs. Rowling is the worst thing that has ever happened to Harry Potter. But a particularly interesting one was, I think the better tactic of dealing with the news of J.K. Rowling possibly being a TERF is not calling her a TERF, but instead to share trans stories and views with her. Flood her feed with it. Hashtag trans is beautiful. Hashtag LGBT. Well, I think that message in particular really got to J.K. Rowling, as she then decided to follow a trans woman. Wonder who this could be. Was it someone like Paris Lees, Monroe Bergdorf, one of the people these activists would love her to be listening to? Actually, no, it was my friend Fiona Lander. Now, Fiona is incredibly gender critical, especially for a trans woman. But you did say that she should be listening to trans voices. Well, Fiona's a trans voice. Okay, you guys don't agree with her. Okay, you guys think she should shut up. But she's a trans voice. She's allowed to have that voice. She is trans. You didn't necessarily specify it had to be the right voice, did you? But of course, that's what you're going to come out and say afterwards, because you can't be listening to the wrong tranners. You can't be listening to Fion, or you can't be listening to someone like myself. No, you've got to listen to Alok, a guy who thinks that little girls can be kinky. Yeah, he seems like a good representative for trans people, doesn't he? But what I find amazing about this is Harry Potter is one of these brands that's always been associated with the SJWs, especially on the likes of Tumblr. It's one of the big things with Doctor Who and Sherlock. And yeah, to find out that J.K. Rowling is actually one of their sworn enemies, it must be throwing their whole lives into absolute ruin. What are they going to do? Potter's a big deal to the queer people. And to find out she doesn't follow their ideology to the T, absolutely shocking. Now, I can't exactly speak for what J.K. Rowling's views on this are. I don't believe she's actually commented on it directly. She's just listening to people, and that seems to be what the crime is here. She's listening to the wrong people. I don't think that's a crime at all. In fact, I would say good on her for listening to people. I might not agree with Magdalene Burns, and I think that the comment which I read out earlier was not particularly nice, but people should still listen. But what makes this extra interesting is a recent study which came out to say that young people are actually finding it more and more difficult to now accept LGBT people. And when you see the response that Rowling has got because she started listening to people who don't have pure views, you can kind of see why. You can see why tolerance for people like me is dropping off, because they always associate trans people with the absolutely rabid fundamentalist extremists who screech and gnash their teeth and froth at the mouth at anyone who disagrees with them, and they associate us all in the same way. Their reaction to this should be actually thinking, we need to speak to her, we need to understand what her position is and build upon it, but they never do. All they do is just throw dirt. They cannot possibly debate people. They're like Antifa, and they're very similar in their whole way in which they go about things. Fuck TERFs, fuck capitalists, fuck fascists. Everyone is a bad thing if they disagree with us. And there is indeed a crossover with a lot of trans rights activists and the likes of Antifa, and I'll be touching on that in just a few moments. Really, trans activists should be looking at themselves as to why one of their dearest authors has now betrayed them. They should really be thinking that they need to get a handle on this and make sure that the public sways in their favour. You don't do it by screeching at people. That's what toddlers do. And it is embarrassing, and it's especially frustrating for me when I have to be lumped in with that. Of course, all of this also comes off the back of a Doctor Who writer getting in trouble for maybe being critical of trans people as well. So the whole tumble of this is just going to fall apart, if it hasn't already, because porn is now banned. So the last story that I want to touch on really depends on whether it's a story or not on your own newsfeed. Because not many places are covering this, although it's been a huge deal on Twitter. And I am, of course, talking about the recent brutal assault on conservative journalist Andy Ngo by Antifa at a Portland rally. So just a little bit of background, Andy Ngo often covers Antifa and the actions that they take, really helping expose these people as the vile thugs that they are. He was at a protest on Saturday where Antifa were there to counteract the Proud Boys. Before Andy went, he noted that several people within Antifa had actually pointed him out as someone to target and attack, but he bravely went anyway. And then this happened.
Yo! Fucking own, bitch!
What happened to him is brutal, but what we've really seen is the media is very much pushing this under the carpet as much as they can. We are often fed a narrative that it's only the far right that are being violent, and examples of this on the far left are often ignored. So why am I mentioning Andy Ngo in this what is a cover of LGBTQIA++ news? And well, Andy is gay, and so he therefore falls under the LGBT umbrella. Now, a gay man got brutally assaulted by a mob in broad daylight. You would think that the queer press will be interested in covering this. Except they're not. There is at the time of filming, I've not been able to find any gay sites such as Gay Star News, Pink News, that have even thought of covering this. Yes, he is a conservative, but that shouldn't mean that they don't cover it. And it's unlikely that his sexuality really played any part in the attack. But this doesn't stop the likes of GSN from covering stories if sexuality has nothing to do with it. For example, back at the end of May, when Theresa May announced she was stepping down, Gay Star News covered a gay man who had some thoughts on Theresa May. Turns out that gay man was actually Owen Jones, a socialist activist and journalist in the UK, basically doing his job. But they were willing to promote his point of view when being gay had nothing to do with what he said. But if you want to have a look at attacks, which are covered by GSN, look at the amount of times they cover assaults on trans people. All too often, motives are not known, especially when murder is concerned. And even when an investigation has been completed, it's not actually that often that transphobia is the motivating factor. But that doesn't stop GSN from saying that actually all of these are transphobic attacks. So why couldn't they do a similar angle with Antifa attacking Andy? I mean, after all, they're attacking a gay man. A gay man brutally assaulted in broad daylight, no less. And it's because these outlets, they claim to be community voices, but they're not. They are ideological. They only push specific narratives. If you are a lesbian that questions whether trans women should also be considered lesbians, well, guess what? The gay press isn't a place for you. What if you are a conservative? Well, you're labelled as being hateful, problematic, controversial, in fact, just like the Walk Away group being considered controversial by the gay press when their events have been closed down. And then they run weird ideological fluff pieces, like this one criticising Boris Johnson, saying he's the worst possible prime minister for LGBTI people, when what they're really referring to is a few comments that he made more than 2 decades ago at this point. And so it's no surprise that they're not covering this brutal attack. But there is one other angle that they could potentially run by it, because, well, it was an LGBTI person who got attacked, and it looks like one of the attackers was LGBTI themselves, or well, a trans woman, as has apparently been found by people on Twitter. So a tranner attacking a gay man. What could be more gay news than that? But again, the politics is wrong, the narrative is wrong. You want footage of Nazis, of fascists, bashing the tranners, not tranners bashing gay Asian journalists, shutting them up. But this is getting frustrating at this point. Tolerance for groups like Antifa, who really show that there is none of this solidarity that you keep on hearing in the left, that if you're gay, if you're lesbian, if you're bi, if you're trans, you know, your place is with us. They'll still turn around and club you the second that your ideology doesn't align with them. And I want to see this being exposed within the gay community. Whether you are LGBT does not dictate your politics. It never has, and it never will. And the way that these gay outlets often run themselves, you wouldn't know. But what are your thoughts on the stories that I've covered this week? Is there anything in particular I've missed out? Please let me know in the comments. I'm now going to be getting back to doing more regular videos. I'm hoping to get another one out this week. Please also let me know what you think of this setup. I'm still messing around with the settings. I'm new to using OBS. So I apologize if it's not entirely perfect, but this will be improving. I will leave you with some footage of a fellow who might not be appearing in my videos all too often anymore. Gatsby was a big part of my channel when it first started, and as I've moved flat, I'm no longer living with him. Whilst I'm sure he's going to be appearing on my Twitter for a long time to come, here's this one last video that I was able to film of him back when I lived in my old place. Please feel free to support me on Twitter, Patreon or Subscribestar. And please also be sure to like, subscribe and share this video. It really does help with my channel. And I'll see you all next time. And a special thank you to Sarah, James C. George, Evil Motive, and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.